The world didn't end with a bang, but with a wet, guttural growl. Grey rot wasn't a plague of the dead, but of the violently, insanely alive. It rewrote DNA in real time, fusing flesh with ambient debris, concrete, steel, glass, into monstrous, shambling chimeras. A mutie could have the crushing limbs of a construction vehicle, skin of fused asphalt, and a dozen snapping mouths lined with rebar teeth. Bullets chipped them. Fire only hardened their carapaces. Mankind huddled in fortified arcologies, listening to the grinding, roaring tide outside, dying by inches. Dr. Eris Thorne was the world's foremost mycologist, a man who spoke to fungi. In the deep bioscience wing of Arcology 7, while generals planned futile artillery strikes, Eris stared at a petri dish. His wife Lena was out there. She'd been on a botanical survey when the walls fell. His every breath was a prayer she was dead for the alternative. Her beautiful mind, trapped in a screaming, evolving horror, was a hell he couldn't bear. His secret was not a weapon, but a symphony. For years, he'd studied a rare, subterranean fungal network he called the Silent Hive. It didn't just grow, it communicated, using complex chemical and electrical signals. It was Earth's oldest, quietest internet, and he had learned its language. The mutie horde was not a mindless swarm. The gray rot created a crude, frenetic network of its own, a shrieking, psychic static of hunger and rage that Eris could detect on his scanners. It was a brutal, discordant song. The Silent Hive song was a slow, deep, patient hum of growth, decay, and balance. His thesis was a tear-stained gamble scribbled on sterile lab walls. Could the oldest song drown out the newest scream? The military council laughed. They gave him a derelict sonic emitter array on the Arcology's roof, a relic from a failed psychic disruption project, and a week. "Make your mushrooms sing, Doctor," the garrison commander sneered. "We'll be busy dying with guns in our hands." Eris didn't need a week. He needed a catalyst, a living bridge. The Hive's song was potent but slow, geological. To combat the viral speed of the rot, it needed a conductor, a focused mind. He found it in a forgotten cryocell. Subject Gamma, a young woman named Alara, a volunteer from the early days. She'd been a powerful, unclassified telepath, driven catatonic by the initial psychic shriek of the gray rot's emergence. She was preserved, a frozen, beautiful statue, her mind a scorched field. Eris thawed her. He didn't revive her to consciousness. He hooked her neural interface directly into the core of his emitter, and then into a sterile node of the Silent Hive fungus, which he had cultivated in a massive, pulsing vat. She would be the translator, the human violin string upon which the Hive's song would be played. The first test was a tragedy. He activated the array, aiming at a single mutie scouting the perimeter. The Hive's signal filtered through Elara's mind, washed over the creature. It didn't die. It stopped. The furious light in its multiple eyes dimmed. It looked at its own claws, then at the rusting car door fused to its chest, as if seeing it for the first time. A sound emerged, not a roar, but a confused, mournful whimper, horrifyingly human. Then it simply sat down, placed its head against the concrete, and wept thick black tears until its mutated heart burst from the weight of its own rediscovered horror. Eris vomited. He hadn't built a weapon. He'd built a forced conscience. The commander saw only a dead mutie. Do it again. Bigger. The drama was not in the battle, but in the preparation. Eris sat beside Alara's still form, monitoring the feed from her scorched psyche. As the Hive's ancient consciousness filtered through her, fragmented echoes of her surfaced. A memory of sunlight on water, the smell of old books, a whispered "I love you" to someone long lost. He was weaponizing a soul. Each pulse he prepared would scar her forever. He wept as he calibrated the final sequence, his tears falling onto the control console, mingling with the soft, bioluminescent glow of the Hive. The final assault came at dawn. Not a random horde, but a coordinated surge. Something in the rot network had sensed the threat. A tidal wave of screaming meat and jagged metal roared towards Arcology 7's main gate. "Now, Doctor, or we all die screaming." The commander yelled over the din of collapsing defenses. Eris took a final look at Alara's peaceful face. He whispered an apology to her, to Lena, to the world. Then he initiated the symphony of silence. The emitter array hummed to life, not with a deafening blast, but with a deep, resonant chord that was felt more than heard. It was the sound of a forest growing, of mycelium weaving through dark soil, of patient, inevitable reclamation. The wave of sound hit the Horde. The effect was instantaneous and devastating. The front line didn't collapse, it unraveled. The psychic static of the rot was silenced, replaced by the Hive's overwhelming signal of peaceful entropy. Muti's clutching steel beams suddenly perceived the tortured memory of the ore within the earth. Those fused with concrete felt the crushing weight of geologic time. The rot's vicious, artificial cohesion was replaced by the Hive's truth. All things returned to the soil. They didn't die fighting, they died understanding. A giant with crane-arm limbs looked at its own reflection in a shattered window and let out a sob that shook the ground before its fused components simply fell apart, seeking their base elements. A swarm of smaller, rodent-like muties stopped, chittering in a sudden, profound sadness, and began to meticulously dismantle each other, returning scrap metal to piles and flesh to the earth. The drama unfolded in a horrifying, tear-soaked silence, broken only by the clatter of falling debris and the soft, wretched weeping of dying monsters, remembering they were once something else. The soldiers lowered their guns, their victory tasting of ash and profound sorrow. But the true cost was in the lab. On Arisa's screen, Alara's brainwave pattern, which had been a flat, scarred line, suddenly spiked. The Hive's song, using her as a conduit, had backwashed. It had filled the emptiness. And in that vast, ancient consciousness, it had found a single, specific, matching psychic resonance, a scar in the world, a familiar pain. The feed from the array's external camera panned across the dissolving Horde. And there, at the very back, half fused with the rusted frame of a city bus, was a figure. Its form was twisted, sprouting copper wire like hair. One arm, a shapeless mass of hardened plastic. But its face, though stretched and mottled with gray rot, was still recognizably Lena's. Her eyes were locked on the emitter array on him. And through Alara's neural link, Eris heard not the rot scream, but a single, clear, agonized thought in his wife's voice. "You found me. Now let me go." The Hive's song was reaching her. She was remembering. She was feeling every second of her transformation. Arisa's hand froze over the kill switch. The commander was shouting in his ear, declaring victory, but Eris was in hell. His weapon, his great triumph, was subjecting the love of his life to an eternity of conscious, unraveling horror. To save the arcology, he had to personally guide his wife through the terrifying, lucid experience of her own dissolution. With a cry that tore from his soul, he didn't terminate the signal, he amplified it. He focused the entire, gentle, terrible power of the silent Hive directly on Lena. He watched on the screen as her mutated form shuddered. The wires retracted. The plastic softened and dripped away. For a fleeting second, her eyes cleared, and she looked directly into the camera lens, a universe of love and apology in her gaze. Then, with a sigh that echoed through the neural link and into his very bones, she came apart. Not in a blast, but in a quiet, biological surrender. Her components separated, carbon, water, trace metals, and settled onto the broken earth. The array powered down. Silence was absolute. The mutant zombie horde was crushed. Secret weapon was a success. In the bioscience lab, the only sound was Eris, Thorn's broken weeping. Before him, Alara slept on, a faint, peaceful smile on her lips, her mind finally at rest in the endless, silent forest of the Hive. On the roof, the emitter was cold, and on the battlefield, the only monuments to victory were neat piles of inorganic materials, and rich, dark, fertile soil where monsters had stood, already being threaded through with the first delicate white strands of mycelium. The Hive was singing again, a slow, deep lullaby of reclamation. It had won, and Eris, the conductor, was left alone in the silence, forever haunted by the one beautiful note he had been forced to play.